creating your business model, this is really the main sort of crux of what we're going to be talking about today. This is a great way to kind of give you a bit of framework and a bit of planning around getting your own business off the ground. So there's a couple of resources I want you to go out and get. The first one is the Business Model Generation book. There's a web link there, you can see it. If you just search for Business Model Generation, you'll find it on the web as well. And the next one is Networking Survival Guide. Okay, about Richard White. Richard's a resident kind of business guru on Data Quality Pro. He's going to do a lot of sessions with us in the future. Both of those books, they're just phenomenal, and you'll see the business model generation techniques used a lot in this presentation. And Richard's going to be doing a lot of sort of sessions from his book as well. But Richard's book is like £7.99 on Kindle. It's one of the best books you'll ever buy as a solo business person, or any kind of business really looking to build opportunities online, offline, wherever. Okay, so we're going to talk about now creating your business model, okay, and I've called this creating your business model Mark 1, basically because you will have lots of different business models over the lifetime of your business, and you can spend months and months planning and creating an incredible business plan, and then you'll find 6 months later that it's scrapped, and that's fine. That's really what happens. It's very hard to kind of have a really clear view of where you want to go, because you depend on the market conditions. I know a lot of people are struggling because of the financial situation, and you have to adapt. You have to change your model there. So these different kind of components we're using on this section, is about 9 of them. They come from the Business Model Generation book, and I found them incredibly useful because they allow you to map these to any business plan that you're looking to get off the ground. So we have customer segments, value proposition, channels, customer relationships, revenue streams, key resources, key activities, and partners, and cost structure. And they pretty much sum up any kind of business that you're looking to build, and they give you a really good framework for evaluating where you are. And you obviously need to have a plan for each one of these different components, and they all work together, and this is really your business model. Okay, so obviously the main focus point to start off with really is the customer segments and the value proposition, because that's really where you're probably at the moment, trying to understand which customers do you want to serve, what value you're going to give to them, and so that's the main focus today. So we're going to split these sessions up a little bit, because I was hoping to do everything, but we've had so many questions. I've decided to break this up into part 1, and we'll probably do a part 2 sort of in a couple of weeks' time. So in this session we're going to cover the first 5 of those, so customers, proposition, channels, relationships, and revenue streams. Okay, so we'll get on to some more at a later date. Okay, so customer segments. Really, the 2 main questions here: so who are we creating the value, and who are our most important customers going to be? Okay, so when you're thinking about this, it's often, people often want to jump into new and exciting sectors and do completely crazy things they've never done before. I would urge against that. Okay, and look at the type of customers you serve at the moment. Okay, so this may be, if you've been doing data quality for electric companies in the south of England, it's probably a good idea to focus on utility companies in that region. Perhaps you've been doing insurance work in New York. Focus on that area. It's always tempting to jump out of your scope and go into lots of different areas, but I would say focus on those segments where you have the most experience, great connections, and the most opportunities to kind of engage with, and think about what roles you're going to need to engage with. So look at I guess roles you've serviced in the past. So it could be CIOs, CTOs, it could be business leaders. You've got to think about those people you've helped in the past. So some tips for customer segments. I think where most people go wrong on this type of area is that they try to boil the ocean. That's what I say. It's the I can do something for everyone syndrome, because people think, well, if I offer everything to everyone, I've got a much bigger net, I've got more chance of finding work. The danger is there that you actually do nothing for anyone. Okay, and it's really hard to refer you to a specific person in the company. So I quite often get companies coming to me saying, we're desperate for an enterprise DQ person. Do you know anyone who specialises in the utility space? But if you've come to me and said, oh, I'm a data quality this, I'm an MDM this, I'm a data governance this, I do all these amazing things, that all just gets lost. It's just a noise. Whereas if you say, I'm a data quality specialist focused on enterprise solutions within this sector, I put that in a mental box, and you can put that on your profile, and it's much easier for people to find you as well. And when you say you can do something for everyone, you also get placed in the kind of generalist camp, and that's not good, because the less specialised you are, the less you can kind of really negotiate on rates and things like that. So going niche gives you a major advantage over other companies as well, because certainly bigger companies, because it's easier to differentiate on bids and RFPs. If you've got this huge track record of very specialist knowledge that you're promoting in blogs and webinars and things like that, it helps differentiate you and raise up your value. And it's also easier to help you tailor content. You know, if you're a Solvency II specialist, you could probably do data quality in lots of other different spheres. Okay, but if you're writing content specifically for Solvency II, that content is going to get search indexed by Google more effectively. You're going to get more invites to conferences. It's going to be much easier to kind of pigeonhole your content and drop it in the right location for the targets you want to reach. So narrow your focus. Okay, go for very tightly defined roles, not just anyone involved in information within any type of company. Go for like the CIO, IT manager, ops director sort of roles. Any role you've done some work for in the past. Start to narrow your sectors a little bit. Obviously focus on geography and look at specific pain as well, so compliance, regulatory, things like that. And that's what you're trying to do, is just really kind of narrow down those customer segments as much as you can. Okay, so how do you evaluate your segment? So I think what we'll do now, we'll jump into LinkedIn a little bit here, because I think I just want to give you some kind of practical tips on this. So just bear with me a second as I come out here and pull up my LinkedIn page. So okay, so what we're interested in here, we're trying to see how we can use LinkedIn, okay, to kind of find ways to segment different markets. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I've just brought up the advanced sort of viewer here. Now I've actually got LinkedIn Premium, which gives me a lot more features. If you're considering launching your own business, or if you've got your own business, I would definitely recommend you sort of try this option out. It's been incredibly useful for me. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to type in CIO in here. Okay, and apologies, there may be a little bit of a lag on the screen as we're pulling back this data, because I know the GoToWebinar software can be a little bit behind. But okay, so what I can actually see, if I scroll down my page here, what it allows me to do, when I'm searching on CIO, it allows me to show all the different industries. Okay, so I can get a feel for those CIO type roles. Perhaps I've done lots of work for CIOs. Perhaps I've been an enterprise DQ head who's reported to a CIO. Okay, what this allows me to do is see all the different types of roles. I can zoom in on them a little bit for you here. Okay, I can see all the various different industries, and what I can start to do is basically create a map of all of these and start to list which ones have the highest distribution. Okay, and what that means, I mean, I'll give you a quick example here. I've got an Excel spreadsheet, so I can, if I zoom in a little bit, you should be able to see that. I can start to list all these different roles by different sectors. Okay, and obviously what you find is that people have different roles, different role titles. So people might be called CIO, they might be called Chief Information Officer, they might be called IT Director. And again, just go through each one of those using LinkedIn and just start to map out all of those different industries and look at the relative weightings in terms of people within each different industry section. So, IT and services, financial services, investment management, these kind of things here. So perhaps we're really focused on the finance sector. Okay, so if we click down on the finance sector there, we can start to get a feel for where do some of these people hang out. Okay, another useful thing you can do, if you click on the expanded option at the top, okay, we can start to order by different elements. So we can start to order by relationships. Okay, we can see who's connected to us. We can do it by connections. So one of the things you might want to do is look at the people who have the highest amount of connections, because they're more likely to connect with you. Okay, as well. And really what we're doing here, we're trying to find relative sizes of industry segment based on those kind of role types. And one of the things you can start to do then is, if you basically look at some of these profiles, you can see the sort of groups that you share with them. Okay, so one thing I often do is I'm looking at a new segment that I want to kind of connect into. I just look and see which groups these people are registering for, which groups they're active with. And it's a really powerful technique because you can just start to build up, like this guy here, CIO, so CIO forum, CIO network, CIO zone, and what you do, you start to build up all the different groups where these people reside, and that's really important because we're going to use that later for marketing and things like that. But this is a really simple way when you're trying to figure out which segment to go for. You can start to use this tool to to figure out which segments are going to be big enough for you to kind of tap into, because obviously we can see things like companies as well down the side here. These are the biggest companies, so you can actually even pull out individual companies and then figure out a way of actually connecting with these people as well. So if we just go back to the presentation, okay, so we just talked a little bit about how you evaluate segments, how do you find those segments. So like I say, one of the easiest ways to do it is just to use that advanced option within LinkedIn, and then just start to look at the relative volumes of people against different industry segments. And that way you can also group it by company size. Okay, so if you want to find people in sort of large companies or small companies, there's different size indicators there which you can set. You can do it by locations. So if you want to find people within 100 miles of you, you can do that as well, and that gives you a really good indication of, are there likely prospects within my catchment and my niche that I can tap into. Okay, so what we've learned really is, you can estimate the relative size of a segment against other segments that you may be considering. You can also estimate the accessibility of a segment. Okay, because what you can do, you can actually see out of all of these people who are in groups, who are active in groups, who has a blog. Just before we got on here, I was looking at some profiles, and what I found was that when you get into the large companies, such as the 10,000 plus type employees, what you find is that the group participation really drops off. But there seems to be a sweet spot around that 500 to sort of 2,000 or 3,000 size company, where the CIOs tend to be a little bit more active in groups. Some of them might have their own blogs and things like that. So I guess the 10,000 plus companies, they're probably a little bit tired. Those guys are probably tired of being pitched all the time. So you try and find that market size that you know it's going to be reasonably easy for you to get your content in front of via the groups and the forums and things like that. Okay, to do this you really need to build a seeding network. I've got about just over 2,500 network connections on LinkedIn, and it's not hard to do this. It's a lot easier if you're still an employee. But get started today. Sort of build 20 connections a day, automate it. There's a little tool I use called Texter, Texter, in Windows, and that just automates it all for me. I just press one button and it fires the connection away. I just can do that all day long. Sometimes use my wife just sits down and she does it when she's watching the telly. So you can build these connections very easily. Start with your known contacts in Outlook and then build out sort of on LinkedIn group connections and things like that. Okay, so how to prep your segment is the next thing I want to talk about. So, we talked a little bit about here just earlier the different types of ways to figure out what your segment's going to be. So once you've got a feel for your segment and what I call your engagement customer, the person you're most likely to resonate with, your services are most likely to connect with, your content is most likely to connect with, find out where they are on LinkedIn, join those groups, map out the competitors within those groups because they're going to become allies for you at a later date. Issue connection requests, obviously import contacts from Outlook, and just really accelerate that networking on LinkedIn. And also we're going to talk about a little bit more about this in channels later on in the session. That's some more techniques coming through on the channel side as well. Okay, so next thing I want to talk about is, once you've got a feel for the customer segments you're really happy, you're really comfortable working with, obviously we now want to think about the value proposition. What are you going to deliver to these customers, and what are the sorts of problems you're going to help to solve? And the challenge with the value proposition is that you've probably done lots of different things within your career, and it's quite tempting just to say, well, I've done this for lots of companies, so I'll just carry on and do it. So you've got a lot of questions to ask yourself, really. But really what you want to get down to is what problem can you solve in a very tightly defined customer segment? So there's a list of questions here. Obviously, I'm not going to go through all of these. You can go through these later. But it's things like, why you? What characteristics got you a gig in the past? What made you different? Can what you do scale beyond a one-man band? Are there lots of customer roles where you are? And could you possibly take what you're doing onto the internet? Is the scalability there? All these sort of questions that, and there's hundreds more, and we'll post those into the development group as well, so you can start to go through those and fill out a spreadsheet so you can sort of start to weight the different types of propositions that you might want to get involved with. Just one really quick example. We've just done a feature on a guy called Wiggins. Used to be head of data quality at RBS, became director of data quality at Deutsche Bank. You notice that in every company he was in, they were creating data quality rules over and over again, pretty much the same kind of data quality rules. And this was causing lengthy delays on projects such as Solvency II, Basel III, compliance projects. Obviously, regulatory controls meant these type of problems were only going to get bigger. And he obviously had a lot of expertise in working in this area, delivered executive level all the way through the company, so very experienced. So he launched DQ Rulebooks Limited. Okay, and we've just done a feature on this as well. So if you search on Wayne Wiggins on the site, you'll see that, and we'll post that into the business development group. But what Wayne did was look at each one of those different business model sections, and he just had a really good plan for each one of them. Okay, so he doesn't have a slick website, he doesn't have bells and whistles, he's not out there on social media, but he's got a fantastic channel. He's got an awesome channel through one of the major industry groups. So it's things like that. You can be a little bit weak in one or two of the components, but you have to be strong in at least some of them to succeed. And Wayne's a really good example of what it takes there. Another one is Dar OBrien, who recently interviewed him. He's really, really strong in several of the big components there on a business model. Okay, so how do we get from proposition to sale? And one of the big problems I see in, I guess, networking events and things like that, people will just talk and talk and talk and talk about what they do. And after 20 minutes, you'll just completely, you're just saturated with information. You can't remember really what their proposition is. So here's a really, it's a really simple example. If you were, such as a guy like Wayne, who's got a really, really neat data innovation, this is how you could, introduce yourself at a networking event. So someone asks, what do? You say, well, with a recent data innovation, I help program leaders halve implementation timelines on initiatives such as Solvency II and Basel III. Now, what he's done there really, he's come up with the who, where, and what. Okay, so he's basically said who he is, who he's aiming to serve. He's saying whereabouts in the organisation those people are, so he's program leaders. And he's saying what he's got, which is a recent data innovation. But he's created a bit of intrigue. He hasn't actually gone into a huge amount of detail about the technology and the groundbreaking this and groundbreaking that. He's basically kept it really, really simple. So what you can then do is follow up with a story. Okay, and we've got some really good examples on Data Quality Pro of how to do this. And Richard White's going to do some sessions for us as well, because he is the storytelling guru. It's a huge part of his business coaching is around storytelling, and he's done some really good exercises for us. And I'll post those into the development group as well. But the key is, you're creating a really simple little link from proposition to sale. So you've got a brief intro, follow it with a story, arrange a demo on the back of that, trial and sale. And at each point, you're creating proof, you're enforcing that proof, you're building that relationship, and all of this can be done very, very simply with a basic website and a very clear, sharp proposition. I think where a lot of people go wrong is that these really complex propositions, they rattle off so many different services that you just get swamped with information. Keep it simple, particularly when you're starting out. Okay, so some questions then when you're thinking about your proposition will be, do you want to be a pair of hands? Or do you want to be a business owner? Most people who go into business just fall back into the same work they were doing before. So you've got to think about how you're going to scale that business. Okay, do enough people need what you do? Okay, you may have been doing the same job for your company for 10 years, but do other companies need it? Well, we're going to show you some ways to evaluate that in a moment. So can you validate that? We're going to talk about how we can do that in a moment. But think of ways to validate your proposition, and are you passionate about it? Because I've got to say, if you're not 100% behind what you want to do, it will show. And running your own business is so much harder than turning up for work 9 to 5. So if you're not passionate about it, it will start to tell. So just ask yourself that question. And it's a tough one, but there's no getting away from it. So how to validate the proposition? This is one of the questions we got asked sort of leading into this session. And there's various different ways to do this, and I've got lots and lots of ideas on this, and again I'll be posting ideas into the development group. So one quick way is LinkedIn ads. Okay, you can target the sort of companies you want to go up against. You can target specific roles, regions, tightly defined targeting, and just post some links in there around the services you want. Okay, now you can look at impressions of how many times that impression was showed, and that shows you your market size. The next thing you can see is clicks. Okay, now it's going to cost you, so keep an eye on that. But you can get a feel for, you can change keywords, change your proposition message slightly on LinkedIn ads, and you can see which one's the most popular. If nobody clicks on one of your ads for an entire week, then you know really it might not be that popular. Whereas if you're getting other ads where people are clicking every few seconds, then it's going to burn through your money, but that's a good thing because you know people want it. Lots of other ways, I won't go through all these, but webinars, create some really good guides. You can promote them on LinkedIn, promote them through us. That's what I'd like to say. We can help you sort of benchmark what your proposition should be by, you can post 3 or 4 different types of content with us, and let's see which ones our corporate members download the most. Let's see how many webinar attendees we get for different types of webinars. So we're here to help you, because obviously it's a win-win for us, because we obviously get lots of people coming onto the site as well. So happy to help you validate your proposition for you. Okay, next we have channels. Okay, so channels are really, how are you going to reach these different customer segments? How are you reaching them now, and how are you going to figure out which ones work best for the future? Okay, so the 2 big questions really for channels are what's kind of solution and partner channels will you need, and also what personal engagement channels will you have to use for your business. So on the solution and partner channel side, you've got things like vendors, consultancies, conference training providers, guys like us, who professional network facilitators and media providers. Obviously you've got things like e-commerce channels, you can have your own website and things like that. Personal engagement channels, so obviously social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, again, DQ Pro, legacy media, journals, newsletters. All of these things are your channels, your conduits to deliver value to prospects, to customers, to after-sale customers, to upsell and cross-sell channels, all these different kind of things. So we have to think really heavily about your channels right from the outset, really, and start to build those channels before you leave the organisation you're in. That's a really important part. So there's about 6 phases in channels. You've basically got awareness and engagement, okay, evaluation and benchmarking, purchase and delivery, support and cross-sell, referrals, and new proposition discovery. So these are the kind of phases you're going to go through where someone doesn't know anything about you and they become aware, and then they start to engage. They start to evaluate what you have, okay, and they start to compare you to other people, and then they may purchase a product from you or a service from you, and then you have to figure out how you're going to deliver via that channel. And then where the really important parts come, which a lot of people overlook, are the support and the cross-sell. So once you've done that delivery, how can you sell more services into that existing channel? It's far easier to sell services to the same channel than it is to find new channels and new customers. So you can actually get, a lot of my past customers become a sales force for me. They help sell me into new organisations, or they help to sell my services in entirely new markets. The other area as well is new proposition discovery, and a lot of people overlook this, is that they spend all this time scratching their head thinking, what proposition shall I create? Just ask people you've actually delivered a proposition for in the past. It's amazing how, I speak to people who spend hours on the phone with me giving me advice. Just ask. That's my sort of biggest tip there. So when you're thinking about sort of channels, some of the questions you might want to ask yourself are, how did you reach past customers in the past? How did you reach past customers or partners? Which channels are open to give you, open to you given your budget? Because when you start, you don't have huge amounts of sort of campaign money and things like this. So you might want to use the social media channels most there. How can you test them? And start to look at your competitors. Document every single competitor, who will probably turn into an ally at some point, and figure out what channels they're using. Okay, and then start to look at the channels that no one has found. Like I said, there's people now in our community on DQ Pro who are doing amazing things, virtual consulting. They're offering services all around the world via virtual mentoring and things like this. What can you do in that area that no one else is doing? That gives you really good recurring revenue and entirely new business models that you probably wouldn't have thought of. So channel discovery. Okay, so how do you start to find some of these channels here? So here's a practical example again. So imagine you're a data governance consultant, okay, and you're thinking of offering some personal coaching, and you want to offer that to program directors who are looking after regulatory projects in the UK. So perhaps you want to offer, say, like several hours a month, or program reviews, or just something to give these program directors the confidence that they're on the right track. So we're going to jump back out to LinkedIn again, and what we're going to do is just going to bring up another LinkedIn page, and I'm just going to click on Advanced. Okay, so title we're going to go for, okay, let's go for Solvency II, because our person does a lot of work on Solvency II, for example. They're a data governance specialist, and so what we're trying to find is all the people in this area. So we can see 3,000 results here, and that's just the UK. Now, you could say if you're doing this virtually, all of a sudden your market could be much bigger. So it could be anywhere up to, let's see what the data comes back on this, 7,410. So it just shows you, by having a slightly different business model, you can offer something to a much bigger market. So things to think about there are, can you charge slightly less but reach the market size? Can you scale? Can you automate what you're doing? So just things to consider there. Okay, so we're going to focus on the UK, and what we're going to do, we're just going to look at some of the points I want to pull up here will be where are these groups? Okay, what groups are these people in? So again, we can see risk regulation reporting, Solvency II, Solvency II SOAPs. So you can get a feel for where people are hanging out. You can, within your group viewer, when you're clicking on groups at the top here, one of the neat things you can do is kind of see the daily transactions and the daily activity within those groups. So I can see IODQ is always a fair bit of information there. But if you look at the Solvency II type groups we were talking about before, you can see who's talking regularly, and when you go into those groups as well, if we just jump into some of these groups, let's pick a Solvency II one, Solvency II experts one. Okay, we can start to see where new members are coming from. So we can start to track organisations like that by clicking on the members one, and we can start to build up. Again, it takes a bit of time, but you can go through all the new members, figure out all the companies they're coming in from, and one of the things you can start to do, people will be posting things into the discussions group that are actually, you might consider them spam when you're when you're an employee. You know, if you're a consultant working for one of these companies, you might consider these a bit annoying. But what you can try to do is start to see where are these companies coming in from. A lot of you'll get a lot of things like this, Solvency II Summit coming through, Raphael Borrell. So let's have a look at Raphael, and you can track some of these people. You can see the sort of companies they're working for, and you can start to build up a picture of all the channels that all of these different companies are actually using. So this guy works for Avantage, so we can have a look at this guy, and you can see there. So on paper they look like a competitor, but you can see all the different people in there, and then you can start to see, go over to their website. And really what you want to do is be going through every single competitor in your space, and to build up a list of all the different channels they're using, and build up a list of all the different kind of groups and areas all of the people in these groups are members of, and just figure out ways to get your channel connected to these people. So yeah, you pick up all the different events, all the different magazines, trade journals, everything these guys are kind of connecting with, because that's going to be your channels into these. Okay. All right. So let's jump back to the presentation. Okay. So once we've understood our sort of channels and how we're going to connect with these people, we need to figure out our relationship strategy. Okay, how are we going to keep building relationships with them, and how are we going to manage those relationships, how are we going to automate them, those kind of questions. So for each of those customer segments we need to figure out a relationship strategy. We also need to figure out how costly each strategy is going to be. Okay, so for customer relationships, you want to think about, is it going to be like a personal assistance type relationship required? Is it going to be product based? Are you going to be looking at co-creation, where customers help you design new products and services? There's all sorts of different types of relationships you need to consider. Okay, and also think about the relationship you need during acquisition, retention and upsell, because they all differ. Some of these you can automate, but some of them you can't. So you need to think quite heavily really about the relationships. Now for customers, for getting new customers, I think this is a big advantage for small businesses, because this is an actual quote from one of our members recently who said that they were looking to buy a product, and they said that several products fitted their needs, but they honestly felt that one of the companies was a much better fit, because as they said, they treated them like royalty, and that was a real factor in why they got the deal. They actually said the product probably wasn't as good as some of the other leading products, but the way they were treated was important, and this is your kind of secret sauce. And I get this a lot from companies who say, hey, we thought we were going to get such a great experience from company XYZ, and we didn't. And this small outfit, in the middle of nowhere, they treated us so well. So that is your key, really, to delivering value and building sort of new business. And it's absolute gold dust for the smaller business. It really is. That's the key to your success. So some simple innovations can really transform your relationships and the perceived value with your customers. Yeah. So for one project, I was going up against another company, a much bigger company. I was just a one-man band. I said, I'm going to use Basecamp, which is a customer management portal, kind of wiki, and they absolutely loved it. And I got the gig above this much bigger consultancy, just because they liked my attention to customer relationship. So things like that, I'll give you some ideas on the development group as well, so you can get some ideas there. So think about your past employers and customers. What did they like and dislike about working with other suppliers and providers? Which companies do they always use? Why do they always use them? How can you improve the experience they have? Speak to people, pose questions in forums, get connected with some of your prospects and ask them. It's much easier to do this before you launch a business. Okay, so if you're a permanent employee, now's the time, because you don't have that I'm selling something tag around you. But even when you are, I'm constantly asking vendors who I'm trying to sell sponsorships to, what do you want? what did you like about other sites? What can I do for you? And some of them will talk for hours about what they want, because it helps them as well. So just a few things there to think about, because that's one of the main areas you're going to need to innovate and differentiate. Okay, next, the good part is obviously revenue streams. How are you going to get paid? How do customers currently pay? How much do you think they're going to prefer to pay? And how much does each of your revenue streams contribute to the overall revenues of your business? And so you really need to think about what revenue options are available to each of your different customer segments. Okay, because as we mentioned before, you could create a new customer segment via the internet. You might be able to charge slightly less than if you were doing on-site consultancy and things like this. So different models really. You have the transaction revenues, which are pretty much one-off payments. So could be, I come to your site, I do a day's work for you, and you give me some money. But increasingly you have new kind of revenue streams, such as recurring revenues, whereby you could say, okay, I'm an enterprise data quality guru. I've been doing this for 15 years. I could sell a service to a CIO or another enterprise DQ head, which gives them 4 or 5 hours sort of mentoring a month, and that could be in a group format. So that's a perpetual recurring revenue, which that's a really great model to get into. Or you could do a kind of blended model where perhaps you go in and do a 2-week audit, and then you follow up with a quarterly health check, or perhaps you sell a product. It's a product you've built, an information product, for example, a framework, and then you provide annual updates and maintenance on top of that. So the key here is, how can you scale your revenue? Because most people just go in and do the same bums on seats kind of consultancy or development work or whatever they've done before. So they're really just a glorified employee. You've got to think about how can you scale revenue streams. And this is what we're trying to do on Data Quality Pro. Obviously, we're trying to scale the site. So we don't just serve one customer, one type of segment. We're trying to build a repeatable revenue model, and think about how you can do that for your business as well. Okay, some other tips. Price, in my experience, is largely based on perceived value. Okay, and what I've found a great deal is that it's also linked to the level of pain the person is going through. Okay, so if someone's got a lot of pain, they will generally pay, and I charge probably 3 times more now for my kind of daily rate than I did probably 5 years ago. I don't think I'm 3 times wiser. I certainly feel 3 times older, but it's about perception. I ask that price, and I get it because I can demonstrate value, and that's really what you've got to do. You've got to improve the perceived value of what you're offering. Create margins as well, so that if you can get other affiliates to sell services for you. Okay, so don't try and cut your margins so tight that you can't really offer the ability for other people to sell your services, and avoid discounting at the plague, like the plague. When I started out, I would just discount because I wanted the work, and then what I found is when I tripled my price, I very rarely had to negotiate on value, because what I would do is, say I was doing some coaching or something like that, and people said, well, we really want to bring the price down. You take value away, so you can say, well, if you're concerned about the price, I can give you X, Y, Z, but I'll take away the coaching calls or the mentoring calls that we were going to give you. Other ways I've done it is, when I was doing the DQ consultancy, I had a lot of tools that I actually brought with me, like a huge big toolbox of performance management tools, BI tools, project tools, DQ tools that didn't really cost me anything because they're things I was using with partners and things like that. But in the eyes of the customer, it really increased the value. Okay, so whenever they said, well, we'll cut the price, I said, okay, well, I'll take away all these tools then because you obviously can't afford them. Instantly, the negotiation went back into my favour, because right, okay, we need those, we'll settle on that price. It happened all the time. And the key thing as well is to emphasise the value to the individual, not just the company. So point out to them, if you're trying to discount me, this is what you are going to lose, not the company. Okay, so that's just some things I've kind of learned over the last few years around sort of beating that discount trap that a lot of companies try and force you into. Okay, some other tips then. I think it's really important for a small business to have entry point services. Think of a product like, if you think like LinkedIn, it's free. You pay a little bit more, and you pay a little bit more. How can you do that? Well, you can have a free webinar series. We've got about 60 odd people on the session today. You think about, that could be 60 leads for your business potentially, and that's why we're doing it, because we want to kind of coach you on things, but there may be a small percentage of you who probably want to take on board a sponsorship or some business coaching with us. So just do exactly what we're doing, just replicate exactly what you see me do on Data Quality Pro. So free webinar or handbook. Okay, on the back of that you might want to say a half-day coaching seminar. Okay, so let's say you're an expert in product evaluation. Okay, so you create a series of webinars and handbooks on how to evaluate products, data quality products. So you have the free webinar, half-day coaching. Okay, maybe a 2-day deep dive where you go back on their site and help them specifically, and then perhaps 6 months regular coaching beyond that. Okay, so different revenue streams and different ways to create that ladder up to the higher value, because that way you can scale. Because a lot of these things can be automated. You can bring in other people to do the seminars and webinars for you, and other ways you can do it. You can kind of automate the sales delivery. So say you create a really good information product on how to evaluate 20, 30 different products on the market. You could build a microsite with a front-end payment gateway on that. We're just about to launch a store on Data Quality Pro that allows our members to actually sell information products or services or consulting or seminars or whatever. So we're opening up these models now to help our members sort of create some of these really nice new innovations. So if you're thinking of your target, say in the first year you want to make $100,000, and you're thinking, well, I want to have a couple of months off for holidays and things like this. You've kind of got 4 options, I guess. You work for one client, essentially doing exactly what you've been doing for the last 10 years, and you make your 100K that way. You could go the other route, which could be virtual mentorship for a number of clients, say maybe 5 clients paying $2,000 a month. You could create a launchpad service, such as a data quality assessment launchpad, or a data quality MDM launchpad, or data governance launchpad, that kind of thing. And you could sell that package for $10,000, which is not a huge amount of money given the price of these programs, and you could aim to pitch one of those once a month. Okay, so there's lots of different ways to get to that figure, but the key is thinking about how you're going to scale and how you're going to basically create products and packages that can help you sort of build this business up. Okay, so what have we learnt so far? Because aware of time, we've been on a while now, but I guess what we've learnt are customer segments, go hyper niche. when you're starting out small. Don't try and offer everything to everyone, doesn't work. For your value proposition, be adaptable. Don't stick with one proposition, it will probably change in a few months. Don't be too hung up on having one proposition when you start. You sort of start to figure out ways to test and figure out what the best proposition will be. Channels, build those now, because they're the gateway to your prospects. Be innovative in the way you create new channels. Customer relationships, they're your advantage. That's the one thing that you have over bigger companies. They can't replicate your relationships in many cases. Revenue streams, test the market. Okay, you're not going to know what the best revenue stream is until you test it. And we can use Data Quality Pro to do that. There's loads of other ways you can do that. We'll show you how to do that in the development group. And add perceived value. Like I said before, I use Basecamp, which is probably about £10 a month, and on the back of that I got a £20,000 project and beat another much bigger consultancy. So it cost me £10 a month to be, and that was just like one simple innovation. You only have to do one tiny little thing more than another company to get the deal in many cases. Okay, so we had a few questions from people saying, I'm in this role, how would I get started?